Now, why don't we crack open the book that we were reading, this Roar of the Ganges, written by Swami Tadatmanandaji, who has given his permission for me to read this to all of you. And he also mentioned that he'd be making this book free as a PDF soon, so I don't have to encourage you to buy it. But you're welcome to anyway, of course. In this book, before Swamiji was known as a Swami, a spiritual renunciant, he was then known as Mark, who I believe grew up in Pennsylvania, or at least came from there to start his spiritual journey. Whereas before he was a young, married, computer scientist. He eventually found a deep urge to study ancient spiritual scripture on the banks of the Ganges, a spiritual river, at an ashram, a spiritual hermitage, in Rishikesh, a spiritual city in India, a spiritual part of the world. Let's see, what part of the page did we leave off on? We were talking about... yes. Talking about the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, which were two great Indian epics. We were also talking about a bridge that spanned over the Ganges, named the Lakshman Jhula. The narrow road through Lakshman Jhula was choked with the usual mix of people, cows, bicycles, and scooters. To escape the crowd for a while, I sought refuge in a tiny roadside restaurant whose name, Ganga View, was crudely hand-lettered on a rough board hung over its entrance. Entering the dingy doorway, I discovered that, true to its name, it indeed commanded an excellent view of the river's winding course from its rear veranda. I ordered a cool drink and relaxed after my long walk. The restaurant appeared to be popular with foreign visitors. Most of the tables on the veranda were occupied by Europeans smoking cigarettes and drinking mineral water. Among them was Richard, a bespectacled young man from England whose wavy hair stuck out stubbornly in all directions. He told me that he was a graduate student in economics from London. He took leave from his studies to spend 6 months in India to learn about Hinduism and all that, quote unquote. Richard was staying in a small ashram nearby. In describing his own spiritual search, he said that reading a few books on Indian philosophy had stirred his interest. He found those teachings intriguing, but had lots of questions. He had come to India hoping to find some answers. Yet, he complained of not making much progress after a full month of exploration. Richard explained, "Yesterday, I went across the river to the Sivananda ashram to hear Swami Krishnananda give a lecture on Vedanta. He explained how in reality we are infinite, immortal, and all that. But I don't understand. I'm a human being. I was born. I will die. I have a personality, ego, and lots of problems. How can I be immortal and infinite? Am I simply supposed to believe him?" "Well," I began hesitantly, "these teachings need to be understood properly. It's not really a matter of faith. It's more a matter of personal discovery. What is it that I am supposed to discover? He asked. The truth of yourself. But I already know myself, he rebuted. I told you, I'm a human being. I was born, I will die. Yeah, I concurred. It seems like such a paradox at first. But consider this. Suppose there truly is an aspect of ourselves that is infinite and immortal, but we have failed to recognize it. If we haven't discovered it, then of course these teachings will seem paradoxical. In Vedanta, they say that we really don't know who we are. They say we have made many wrong conclusions about ourselves. How is that possible? Richard challenged. Maybe I can be wrong about economic theories and the like, but how can I make wrong conclusions about myself? We make lots of wrong conclusions about ourselves, I responded. For example, think of how you would feel if you scored badly on an examination. When you saw your grade, you might call yourself stupid. But that's a wrong conclusion about yourself. It's just a grade. It doesn't indicate your intelligence. Yeah. So that shows how we can make wrong conclusions about ourselves. If you don't know that you are intelligent, then a bad grade could convince you that you are not. Vedanta points out our tendency to think like this. It teaches that if we don't know who we really are, we are bound to make lots of wrong conclusions about ourselves. Wrong conclusions that make us feel miserable and suffer. The human capacity for making wrong conclusions about ourselves and suffering as a result is powerfully portrayed in a story quoted by many Vedanta teachers. I was happy for the opportunity to share this wonderful story with Richard. Have you ever heard the 10th man story? I asked Richard. He had not, so I began to recount the tale. In India long ago, there were 10 students who lived with their teacher in a Gurukula, a traditional school. It was customary then for students to live with their teachers and study for a period of 12 years. From time to time, their studies would be interrupted by a visit to their parents' home or a pilgrimage to a sacred place. A few days before an important religious celebration, the teacher called his students together and instructed them to go on a pilgrimage. They were to travel on foot to a village many miles away and worship there at an ancient temple on an auspicious date. Their journey would not be an easy one. Their route would cross mountainous regions and dense jungles. Their teacher, being old and frail, could not accompany the boys on their journey, so he charged the oldest boy with the responsibility of looking after the safety of the others. Early the next morning, the boys set out on their pilgrimage. They walked from village to village for 3 days, crossing mountains, jungles, rivers along the way. When they came to a river too deep to wade across, each boy had to swim to the other side. After the last of them had stepped onto the far bank, the oldest boy wanted to check that all had crossed safely. He asked them to stand in a line so that he could easily count and confirm that they were all present. Facing the line of boys, he counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He stopped suddenly, feeling puzzled. Where is the 10th boy? He wondered. Thinking that he must have miscounted, he tried again this time, starting at the opposite end of the line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then he broke out into tears and cried out, "The 10th boy is missing!" The younger boys began to cry while he ran around frantically searching for the missing boy. He looked upstream, downstream, in the jungle, everywhere. But the missing boy was not to be found. Finally, he collapsed in exhaustion and lay on the ground sobbing in anguish. He feared that his classmate had been swept away by the river or devoured by a hungry tiger in the jungle. He was grief-stricken, not only because his classmate was gone, but also because he held himself responsible for the boy's death. An old man happened to be passing by and observed the commotion near the riverbank. He approached the mournful group and asked the oldest of them what had happened. Between sobs, the boy narrated their pathetic story and confessed his responsibility for the tragedy. The man looked around and quickly grasped the situation. He said, "The 10th boy is not lost." The oldest boy replied, "How can that be so? I looked everywhere and couldn't find him." The wayfarer was amused by the boy's foolishness, but restrained his laughter. "The 10th boy was never lost," he declared. "The 10th boy is here. Now, I will show you the missing boy." He instructed the students to line up once again, and directed the oldest boy to stand at his side, facing the others. "Count them again," he commanded. The doubtful boy counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. "See? I told you," he declared. "The boy is gone." The man laughed and said, "You counted 9, and the 10th boy is you. You forgot to count yourself. You yourself are the missing boy for whom you searched." For a moment, the boy stood motionless, stunned by this revelation. And well done, Shakira. Then, as his grief and anxiety vanished, he smiled sheepishly. "That's a great story," Richard said with a laugh. The boy didn't know that he was looking for himself. "Yes," I continued, "he made a wrong conclusion about himself. He failed to recognize who he was. That's the point of this story, to show that what we seek in life, love, joy, peace, and contentment, is already here within us. It's not hiding out somewhere. You didn't lose it anywhere. My guru frequently said, 'You are what you seek.' The seeker is the sought." "But if that's true," Richard countered, "then why don't we realize the mistake on our own?" I explained, Look at what happened to the boy. He incorrectly assumed that the missing boy was somewhere else. So he undertook a useless search along the river and in the jungle. But as long as he continued to search, he would never find his classmate because he was looking in the wrong place. That's why traditional teachers say that seeking fulfillment in the world is futile. We seek love and peace and contentment, but we look in all the wrong places. We laughed, imagining the frantic boy's silliness as he ran around looking for himself. Richard recalled a similar story, familiar to us both, about a man who lost his keys one night. He searched around a lamppost for hours until a passerby came and asked, "What are you looking for?" "My keys," he replied. "Can I help you look?" the passerby asked. "Where did you lose them?" "I lost them over there, in the alley." Astonished, the passerby asked, "Then why are you looking here around this lamppost?" Then came the ridiculous answer, "Because the light is better here." We laughed again at the irony that we generally seek happiness and contentment wherever it is convenient to look. In relationships, in entertainment, in success. But when we are looking in all the wrong places, chasing rainbows in search of the mythical pot of gold. But then we are looking in all the wrong places, chasing rainbows in search of the mythical pot of gold. Richard grew quiet and stared at his empty bottle of mineral water. I gazed out of the window at the Ganges flowing below, thinking about another story, one from the Mahabharata about Karna. And why don't we listen to that story a later time? I am sure there are many other great memories to reflect on in this lovely book, gifted to me by our Sanghi, Sky Guardian. For now, we'll take a moment to pause and reflect on this story of the 10th boy